Like many broader ethical systems, journalism ethics and standards comprise principles of ethics and of good practice as applicable to the specific challenges faced by journalists. When a journalist disregards their duty to disseminate newsworthy information to the public and instead fabricates or sensationalizes a story, they display a blatant disregard for their professional code of ethics. Furthermore, once the scandal breaks, society then rewards these crooked journalists for their dishonesty with book deals, Hollywood biopics, and Dateline interviews. At the core of this issue, major ethical concern lies with the flagrant fabrication of stories by well-respected journalists and the lack of backlash they subsequently receive. Since the Boston Newsletter first began continuous publication in 1704, the United States of America has relied on the media to provide truthful information. The media must uphold a standard of consistency and validity, which can only be done if its journalists maintain their individual ethical standards. Over time, however, individuals have compromised their ethical values. Journalists such as Janet Cook, Stephen Glass, Jason Blair, and Ken Delanian have neglected to uphold their journalistic responsibility and have compromised their ethics. Beginning first with Janet Cook, Cook was brought into the spotlight in the early 1980s when she received a Pulitzer Prize for her article, Jimmy's World, which centered on an 8-year-old heroin addict. Following the article's publication, many readers wanted to reach out to Jimmy in the article, but when he could not be found, it came to light that Cook had fabricated the entire piece. She promptly resigned and later said that she put the story out because of the pressures that were put on her as a writer. Following Cook, Stephen Glass made headlines of his own, but not in the way he was used to. Glass became the subject of controversy when it was revealed that as many as half of his published articles were fabrication. Over a 3-year period as a young rising star at the New Republic, Glass invented quotations, sources, and events in articles he wrote for that magazine as well as others. At least 27 of the 41 articles Glass wrote for the magazine contained fabricated material. The story that triggered his downfall, Hack Heaven, fabricated an entire company called Juked Micronics. He made the company its own AOL webpage and used his brother, who acted as a Juke executive, as a fake source. Fresh on the heels of Glass's scandal, Jason Blair of the New York Times soon found himself in the hot seat as well. Ethical concerns were immediately brought up concerning his work. Blair made horrific errors as a reporter. While covering the U.S. sniper case seen as a barrier to confession peace, Blair wrote many false statements about the case, including attributing lawyers who were not present for the trial, and wrote about a dispute between authorities that had ruined an interrogation process that had never occurred. Lastly, while working as the national security correspondent for the LA Times, Ken Delanian sent his drafted articles to the CIA to be altered in order to give the agency a better image. The article depicted a single drone attack that killed an al-Qaeda leader without causing collateral damage, when in actuality, the al-Qaeda leader, along with several rescue workers, were killed due to the drone attack. This went against the ethical guidelines of the times, along with the Smith-Munt Act and the Freedom of Information Act, which give the public the right to request proven information and documentation from the government. In order to alleviate ethical concerns in the future, it is wise to create a more severe punishment, such as jail time, as an incentive for reporters who don't abide by journalistic standards and fabricate their stories. As a society, we must stop rewarding these individuals for their shortcomings. By giving journalists movie and book deals, they're taking their fabricated and sensationalized stories straight to the bank. We cannot reward crooked journalists for their wrongdoings, and we cannot provide them with money for their inconsistencies. For example, following the demise of Janet Cook, she sold the film rights to Jimmy's World to TriStar Pictures for a profit of $1.6 million. Stephen Glass's career at the New Republic was dramatized in the 2003 film Shattered Glass, in which Glass was portrayed by Hayden Christensen. It eventually earned $2.2 million in North America and over $700,000 in foreign markets for a total worldwide box office of $2.9 million. In 2003, Glass also fictionalized his own story in a biographical novel, The Fabulous. After resigning from the Times, Jason Blair published a memoir, Burning Down My Master's House. He gave multiple interviews before the book's release, pushing the publicity of the story. Ken Delanian was asked to work with the director and screenwriter of the Hollywood propaganda film Zero Dark 30. The film grossed over $139 million and was nominated for 5 Academy Awards and 5 Golden Globe Awards, and took home 1 award from each ceremony. Ken Delaney is being praised for delivering false information and still today covers stories for the AP Washington Bureau. People often misunderstand what the First Amendment actually means. Although it states one has the rights to freedom of speech and press, what is forgotten is that this is a privilege. Once someone crosses the ethical boundaries, these rights can be taken away. These journalists infringed upon their First Amendment rights because they fabricated evidence and facts in order to get their stories. With this, they surrendered their protection under the Free Press Clause and lost their credibility. The topic of fabrication relates back to justice in civic life due to the fact that people are being publicly rewarded for their wrongdoings. This does not set a good example for future journalists. Since the 1700s, the media has been relied on to provide the public with fair, truthful, and unbiased information. As America has made strides to make its government more transparent, its media should follow suit. In this country, journalists are granted the right to speak and report freely. Furthermore, as the people, we deserve the truth from the reporters who are informing us. The bottom line is, if we cannot trust them, then who can we trust?